The Kind Bar story?
He didn't tell you that?
No.
Well, no, I know. There's a story
It's been months since I heard it.
I remember you. You were here last year. Yeah, I remember you. Okay, all right. Okay, you never heard this story?
No.
You gotta hear this. Okay, well, first of all,
It's very interesting.
it's very
to hear
interesting. Okay, it starts here. Oh, the 522nd was a special field artillery battalion. What was special about it, number one, it was all Japanese American, as you can see by all these pictures.
Yeah.
But what was unique about this battalion were two things. One, they were the best artillery battalion in the whole Army.
For
That's
accuracy and
For accuracy
kills and all that. Everything.
and for rapid fire.
Okay.
Now, what these guys did is two things. They would actually train when they weren't in active battle. What they would do is each field piece had a team, a squad, and all the squad members had a particular job to do, and then they would rotate so every member of that squad knew every job. And it was like they would practice. It was
that makes sense.
It was like very precise. So this could fire almost 2 shells for every one of a regular field battalion.
So a normal battalion did not practice as much, or
No.
really?
No, these guys would practice like crazy.
Okay.
You know, so they got really good.
Well,
at it.
they knew that their lives depended on it. I'm
Well,
sure, right?
it's the loyalty question that really does it, because see, all the 442nd, they had not just a job to fight the enemy, but the job to prove loyalty. And how do you do that? You got to be absolutely the best that you can be. Not everybody in the Army was like that. Most of the guys in the Army says, okay, I'm going to serve, I'm going to do my job, I'm going to this and that, and that's it. But these guys had the loyalty question that all the rest of the soldiers had, and so they knew they had to be the best. Just
Were
absolutely
they
the best.
aware of the internment camps when they were
That's
serving?
where they came from.
That's where they came from. Okay.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. So
I
these
didn't know
guys
the
would
timeline
practice.
on all that.
Yeah.
So they were first in the internment camps and then they were recruited to fight?
The guys from the mainland. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So not and we talk about accuracy.
Yeah.
They were extremely accurate. And the reason for that was not just because they practiced more, but these guys, you know, generations like this, my generation, Japanese Americans, Chinese Americans, Asian people, we value education.
Yeah.
We teach it to our kids. We don't want them just to like graduate high school and get a diploma and then go off and and change tires for a living or something, or sell shoes or whatever. They want these guys to go to college. They want them to get a degree. They want them to get an advanced degree if they can. And what do you study? You don't study architecture and economics and so forth. What do? And back then, engineering, math, science. Okay? So that you can get a job that's going to make you some money. Right. So when these guys go to war and they have a field piece, the two things that they know how to do is how to aim it, where to aim it, and how far does it go. So it's simple math, geometry, and a little bit of basic physics. Okay, so they teach you that in the Army. But if you can imagine, like I don't want to belittle people from other parts of the country, but most of these soldiers didn't have a college education, and most of them didn't study math and science.
Right.
So what would they know about about basic physics and geometry? Maybe not a whole lot. And so these guys, because they practiced that, it was a fairly simple thing. They were the most accurate of all the battalions, the armory battalions in the Army.
Wow.
So this is how that started. So they were like well known. And one of the people who found out about this and wanted them in his division was General George Patton.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
They had such a reputation.
He wanted the best.
They were he always wants the best, right?
Yeah,
That was
of course.
his reputation. So he sends for these guys to detach from the 442nd and drive all the way north up to Belgium, where the Battle of the Bulge is going on.
Wow.
But by the time the 522nd goes there, they were like, they made a right-hand turn because the battle was pretty much in hand.
Right.
And now the new job of the 522nd was to go to Dachau. And
That's the
helped
concentration
There's
camps,
a concentration camp. It was actually a labor camp to start with.
right? Okay.
So the 522nd was instructed to go there and to capture the guards that were guarding the Dachau was not just one building. It was like it had acres and acres.
Yeah.
Many buildings.
Yeah.
And so the thing is that when the 522nd got to these camps, the German soldiers, they knew the war was over. This was in like late 1944,
Okay.
early 1945. The Germans.
Yeah, they were leaving and trying to
they were
pretend they're
deserting.
citizens.
They
and
were taking off their uniforms,
Right.
stealing civilian clothes, trying to pass as civilians. Now, one of the things that they tried to do was they tried to destroy evidence.
Yeah.
And Dachau was one of those camps where they didn't have gas chambers, but what the guards tried to do to destroy the evidence so that nobody could talk, they tried to kill all the prisoners. But the problem was that they didn't have a gas chamber, so what they did was they were shooting them.
Right.
So they would line them up, and blah, 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 like that, and
Right.
they'd fall, then you'd bury them, right?
Right.
Well, they ran out of bullets, pretty much. They needed a few, and they didn't have enough bullets. They killed so many. So what they were doing was they would march the prisoners out of the camp and down the road, and way down the road there was a cliff, and they were throwing them off the cliff
Wow.
in order to destroy the evidence. Okay, so one of the last groups to be terminated that way were walking down the road, and the line was so long that the front of the line couldn't see the back of the line because it was snowing.
Okay.
And it was snowing so hard,
And of course, they have no shoes, no clothes.
no nothing.
Yeah,
hardly.
they're half dead already.
Half
right?
dead, yeah. So there's 3 guys in the back of the line, and they make a run for it. So nobody sees them. And what they did, just to try to get away, was they tried to hide inside of a snowbank. So they dug a big hole in this big snowbank because it was wide out. It was really
Right.
snowing hard. They went inside the snowbank, covered up the entrance, and they stayed in there all night. And they managed to survive that night. The next morning, they came out of their snow cave and there was nobody around, so they escaped. Okay, so the name of the family, the last name was Lubetsky. They were Jewish.
Right.
It's a dad, it's 2 sons. Okay. So they didn't know what to do now that they'd escaped, so they decided to go back to the camp that they came from. So they were walking back down the road, and here comes the 522nd up the road, and at first the Lubetskys don't know what to make of it because these guys are Japanese. Where's the white guys,
Right.
And so, but they recognize the
The
stars and the
uniforms,
stripes
right.
and so forth. And so one of the sons speaks English. His name's Larry. And so Larry interprets his dad and his brother. He goes, there's a relief station back at the camp, and they'll give us food, water, clothes, medicine, and then
The camp was already secured at
the
that
camp
point?
was secure.
Overnight?
Overnight.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we can go home if we're good and we're well enough. So the dad and one of the sons say, okay, let's do that. And Larry, because he speaks English, he was asked to go with the 522nd to be their interpreter because he speaks German, English, Austrian, and several languages. So
Right.
they said, okay, fine, this is great. So Larry goes along with the 522nd as they meander, going from village to village.
But he was a prisoner, right?
He was a prisoner.
But how was he even able to physically go anywhere? They were so
Well, apparently he was well
near
enough.
death.
He was well enough. I mean, he was
Okay.
hungry, he was starving. And
Yeah.
the good thing that happened was that because he was in such poor health that they had to take care of him
Right.
while they were going from place to place. So they fed him, they clothed him, they got
Yeah.
him a little bit of medicine, and he gradually regained his strength. And
Wow.
as they went from place to place, he served as their interpreter. So one of the Japanese American soldiers, befriended him and said, I'll take care of you. And his name was Susumu Ito. Yeah. So Seuss takes care of him throughout the time that they were together, and that was actually until the war ended,
Wow.
pretty much. So they become actually really, really good friends. But the war ends, and so Susumu Ito, his time in service is up, so he gets back to the United States and he gets his life started and so
Yep.
forth, picks up where he left off. Larry Lubetzky goes, I think, back to Palestine. I think goes, or someplace around that area. And so now I'm going to fast forward 70 years.
Okay.
Okay, now we're like in the 1990s and 2000s, something like
Right.
that. And Susumu Ito, now he's 90 years old, and he is a professor at Harvard University.
Wow.
So he's really done well for himself. Not
Yeah.
only that, but he is a PhD in biology. So he's a retired professor emeritus. And so what Susumu Ito does in his retirement is he put together this like a PowerPoint presentation of his life in the 522nd during the war.
Okay.
So what he does is he goes to these different community groups and he puts this show on, and he's got like a PowerPoint presentation. He's got his pointer and everything. And so one day he's at like a Jewish community center, and it's like it's really crowded because he's talking about the Dachau, right? And
Yeah.
his experiences at Dachau.
Yeah.
Well, two of the guys in the audience look at, you know, one of, I gotta come on over here. I gotta show you this.
So that's kind of the.
In 1946,
Are you going to share that with him?
Yep.
Larry Lubetzky
Good. I was.
writes Susumu Ito on this little
I
card,
did this to a family, and their
telling him
mom, dad.
just that,
and
very
two
simple.
kids.
I'm alive. Thank you very much.
Gave it to the smallest kid.
Damn German.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Looked at it.
So this, Susumu Ito keeps this,
Yeah.
and in this PowerPoint presentation, this goes up on the wall.
Right.
And there's two guys in the audience. They look at that and they go,
I just know.
"Do you think this is the same family that we know?"
Yeah.
And so they text their friend, whose name is Daniel Lubetzky, and they ask him, "Hey, do you know this guy?" And Daniel Lubetzky says, "This is my uncle. That's my Uncle Larry."
Wow.
So now his Uncle Larry is still alive,
Yeah.
and so is Susumu Ito. The two guys get together, not physically, because Susumu Ito is in very ill health by this time. So, you know, the story goes from there, that we have these two guys that finally made connections. Well, Daniel Lubetzky, his dad was one of the survivors. You know, the dad and the son
Yeah.
went back to this relief camp.
Yeah.
Well, his uncle was was the son that went to the relief camp.
Wow.
So, excuse me, that was his father. It's his son. So, I think his name is Romero. I can't remember. Anyway, so Daniel Lubetzky's dad settles in Mexico, and he's raised his family. But one of the things that he told his family as they were growing up, he says, "When you guys grow up, I don't want you to just, you know, be rich, you know, and make a lot of money. I want you also to be a good person.
Right.
I want you to help take care of people." So Daniel Lubetzky takes this to heart, and he decides that he wants to help take care of people in his own way. So what he did, and this is not a fact, but I believe what happened is he took a look at the people that he's surrounded with, which are mostly Latin people, and he looked at their overall health.
Right.
And I'm sure he didn't like what he saw, because if they're anything like the Latin people that I know, then you know, they don't live a long time. They don't live as long as we do. They live until their 50s and 60s, a lot of them, partly because they work out in the fields
Right.
as laborers,
Very hard
but
work.
also because they suffer things like obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, cancer, heart attack, stroke, and so forth, all these things, and so they don't live as long. So Daniel Lubetzky, as an entrepreneur, wants to develop foods that are actually more healthy. And so what he did is he formed that company there.
Oh, that's you. So,
I'll find some more of these.
You could have mine.
so the Kind Bar.
The Kind Bar was created by Daniel Lubetzky,
Yeah.
and the reason he calls it the Kind Bar, and it's also the Kind Company, which today it's been sold But at the time that Daniel sold the company, it was worth in excess of $10 billion. So that is an effort to create something that is good for people as an entrepreneur.
Wow.
And so
What a story that is.
that is because of the
Kind Bar
kindness.
story.
The Kind Bar story is because of Susumu Ito
Yeah.
that befriended his Uncle Larry during that period of time. And also, interestingly enough, during the time where his family was imprisoned at Dachau, apparently there was a German guard who took pity upon them, and he's not supposed to do that.
No.
Because he put his life on the line by doing that.
Yeah.
And he either gave him or tossed them a half-rotten potato to eat. And instead of like throwing it away because it's half-rotten, they just took the good part
Right.
and they shared it amongst themselves and they ate it. So because of those two acts of kindness, Daniel Lubetzky formed the Kind Company because of those two things. And that's the story of the Kind Bar.
Wow.
And how it got its name. And the Kind Company. And
That is a good story.
that's a good story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Thank you for
every so
sharing
often we come, like last week, apparently there was a woman who apparently knew all about this story.
Really?
A lot about it, yeah. And I've come across two people now that know a little bit about the story. And the reason they do is because Daniel Lubetzky, he's still alive. He's old. He's like 90 or thereabouts, but he's still alive.
Wow.
And he, once in a while, appears on Shark Tank.
I watched that show.
You watch the
I
show.
don't know if I've seen him on it, but
He's not on too often, but he is on it once in a while.
Yeah.
And what better judge to have of an entrepreneur
than him.
than him, who owned an $11 billion company
Yeah.
at one point in time.
Wow.
So that's where these two people says, I know him because I seen him on Shark Tank. And I go, okay. And so they look him up, and sure enough, they come across the Kind Bar. They don't come across all the war picture, wars and stuff
Right.
like that. But in terms of like where he came from and what he does, the Kind Company.
That's great.
And that's the story of the Kind Bar. So when you see it again, now you know the story.
Thank you for telling me that.
Oh,